Well, I don't think anybody else is coming along, so I might as well make a start with this anyway. Well, today we're just going to talk about some just buffs, debuffs, and keybinds, really. It's just an extension of last week's talking about the user interface and the importance of having stuff in a suitable place so that you can see what you're doing and you've got all the useful information that you need. And we're going to go into keybinds, and I've looked at the advantages and the disadvantages of using keybinds compared to clicking, and also I've included some pictures of screenshots of my keybinds and my interface, just to give you an idea of how I set mine up. But everybody's different, so everybody's entitled to set it up their own way, but I can give you a few tips. What were you going to say, Seish?
Nothing. Just testing.
Can everybody see the presentation slides, by the way?
Yeah, but it's lagging a bit. It's behind what you're saying.
Yeah, it will be. That's because it's live stream. But if you actually want to see the direct slides, there's a link in the channel as well, and you can just view it through PowerPoint online, and you can cycle through them yourself. So I'll just give you a second to get those up. I've got 7 people viewing this, so someone isn't on Steam. Not Steam, Twitch.
Yeah, mine's just loading up on the menu there. It's session 3 is highlighted.
Yeah, you should be able to just cycle through the slides yourself. So, has it given you access to do that?
Do I need to sign up to Twitch at all?
If you're using it through Twitch, no, you can just view it. If you're using the direct link to the presentation, you can view it without a Microsoft account as well, I think.
Okay, so it's loading up. It's onto the aims and objectives screen now, and it's loading up stuff. I can see importance of buffs/debuffs.
Yeah, that's the screen I'm on at the moment. I'm going to move on to the next one now.
Okay.
Yeah, when the next screen pops up, it's just an extension on what we talked about last week. If you haven't seen the presentation from last week, there is a link in the channel again. And really just emphasises upon the points about the UI being really important way of providing information that you need, and essentially just ensuring that you haven't got too much information and you haven't got too much clutter. There's various ways of presenting information through icons, sounds, bars, etc. I'll show you some of those in a minute with the add-ons that I use. But generally the default UI is a bit crap for positioning, and the debuffs and the buffs are all stuck away in the top right, so they can be a bit difficult to see, which is why people tend to stand in fire and things, or they don't move to a certain place when they've got a debuff because they just simply haven't noticed. Now I was having a quick look on the internet, and I was just searching for some really bad examples of UIs to see what I could come up with, and I found one that was quite cluttered, and it's an example of having far too much information, and it should pop up in a second.
Holy crap.
Hopefully nobody's interface looks like that.
How did you get my UI?
Well, yeah, you know, it's all over the place. It's famous.
Cool.
But yeah, as you can see there's like duplicate information. There's too much information, and you can't really see what's going on. You're just being distracted all over the place. There was an example that I did find where it was literally just like raid frames, a massive recount, and there was nothing else on there really. It was just filling up the screen. I think that must have been Mythies.
Sounds like a healer, because that's all you need.
As a healer, you don't need recount.
How do you know how much you're beating the other healers by if you don't?
Why do you want to beat the healer?
I'm only joking, but I also need recount very much for my DPS. It's very important for a disc priest.
Well, it's helpful for sort of a live snapshot of what's going on, but also as an analysis afterwards. If you think something's gone wrong, you can actually go through the logs, go through death reports or whatever.
Yeah, of course that, but it's not about
Those of you who have just joined the channel, if you check the raiding workshop link in Mumble and click on the comment thing, the C, there are links to the Twitch stream and directly to the presentation slides if you just want to cycle through them yourself. For anyone who is cycling
stream?
through them. Yeah, there's
More like advert stream. I missed the cluttered screen because it's just plain adverts.
Oh, you'll have to
I
load
think
up the
I got a glimpse of
presentation.
it, and I thought it was mine for a second from the old raiding one.
Probably is.
I've gone complete minimalist now, though.
Yeah, there's two things that people like to do. They either like to go very minimalist or get a bit more information out there. Personally, I like to have some references on the screen to remind me of things because I play a lot of different characters and I just quite frankly forget what's bound to what button. So I need that visual reference to remind me. But there's
Yeah, I kind of wanted the same, but I was always trying to record, so I tried to keep the screen clean.
That's true. That is true. Yeah, it is a bit difficult when you're doing things like that. Have you recorded any videos from Siege at all? Sort of any of the later heroic bosses?
The last one was obviously the last boss we killed, which is the bubble guy, Malkarok.
Oh, okay, you actually had a video for that, did you?
Yeah, it's on YouTube.
Oh, cool. Okay, I think I've got some links somewhere to your channel, so I'll have to have a look at that and see if I can find them. Yeah, basically with your buffs and debuffs, there's long-term buffs which are useful to be aware of at the beginning of the fight when people do ready checks, and it's always a good idea to actually check if you have all these long-term raid buffs when a ready check is done, because that's essentially what the ready check is for. But I mean, this information that isn't really essential, so it can be tucked away. And the Blizzard interface has quite a nice way of doing that. I think it sort of combines it, doesn't it, into... I haven't looked at it for a while, but doesn't it combine the main raid buffs into a section saying whether you've got crit, whether you've got intellect, and whatever?
Yeah, and it tells you like if there's 8 buffs, how many out of the 8 you have and whatnot.
Yeah, that's right. I'm just not familiar with that because I use LVUI and it does that already within itself. So those things can be tucked away in the corner because you only ever need to glance over there if you're missing something at the start of the fight, or if you've been battle resed, and then you might need to check it up there again. But during combat, you don't need them there. They can be shoved out of the way. But other buffs which are important are the short-term buffs such as trinket procs or cooldowns. Now, by default, these are all stuck, mangled in with all the other buffs that you've got at the top right-hand side of the screen, and it's difficult to identify when things are procced. Unless you can recognise sound effects or graphics from the abilities, which is not always ideal. So there are different add-ons that you can get to present this information in a better way. I use weak auras to display it in an icon format. I also use some voice prompts as well. Say if my health is running low, if it goes below 10%, it shouts at me just in case I've missed the visual cue. But things like trinket procs, it's always good to know when something's procced, because you might want to weave in some particular DPS abilities to maximise that trinket proc. Or if it's defensive, you might think, well, if a trinket has procced and I'm tanking, then I don't need to use an additional tanking cooldown at the moment because I've got a trinket proc. So it allows you to work out how to use your abilities better. Debuffs, they are also tucked away by the minimap at the top right by default. I don't find that very helpful. They're quite small as well, and it's understandable why people miss these things. So I use weak auras to have those display right in my face, and there is a set of weak aura strings on our website that cover all of the boss encounters for tier 16. I'll go over that in a minute because I've got some screenshots and I can show you exactly what I mean with the weak auras there. The other thing I want to talk about is just keybinds versus clicking. Really, I mean these are the main points that I've come up with. A lot of people like to click and they feel that clicking is viable, and I agree that it is viable to a certain extent. I mean the main difference is that I've noticed is when you need to use multiple actions at the same time. So for example, when you are moving and DPSing or moving and healing or whatever, when you're clicking, it becomes a lot more difficult to do that effectively, and particularly if you have abilities off the global cooldown as well. I find that very difficult to do unless I have things key bound. So that's why I say it's sort of a faster response time. Once you've learned the binds, it's just there in your head and you can just press stuff pretty easily. The only disadvantage, of course, with keybinds is it does take a while to get used to, and a lot of people get very sort of set in their ways of how they play the game. And when I first changed into it, it was a big transition for me, and I had to do it, as you probably heard me say before, I had to do it bit by bit over a period of time. One other advantage is it can actually reduce your UI clutter. If you want something, if you just want a minimalist UI and you've got keybinds, then you don't need the buttons there really, because you know what the keybind is. Personally, though, I prefer to have the buttons there as an actual reminder. As I said, I just need the reference really. So.
Peter, tell me, can you set like shift keybinds, shift 1 and does certain spell or?
Yep, you can, and if you just wait a second, my keybind should pop up in front of you.
And how do you do that? That's my new question.
If you go into, there's an actual key bindings interface. It's a bit messy at the moment, the Blizzard one, to be honest. But in the next expansion, they're making it a lot easier to find where the different keybinds are. Your different action bars have different names. So you've got like I think you've got action bar 1, special action bar, and things like that. You just need to really look into it and try and work out which one is which. I think if you just go into it and just if you go into, hang on, let me find it.
Yeah, I'm in it.
Evening. Where are you up to?
Just talking about keybinds.
That's cool.
Yeah, because I use ElvUI, I don't know how the default stuff works. Why is my escape key not working? Have I unbound escape? That's annoying.
I'm just wondering on some keybinds, say for instance I've got a Microsoft, I think it's an SX4 Sidewinder keyboard, and it can store up to 30 key hits. So for example, if I'm doing a basic attack, say on one mob, and I've got 2 and 3 as for each of the weapons, and then I want to do, say, eviscerate when I get 5 combo points, is my keyboard going to ignore that until it's processed all the keystrokes I've done?
Usually, keyboards these days, USB keyboards, they can process quite a lot of data at the same time, so it will process them sequentially. So, I mean, what I tend to do is I tend to sort of spam buttons, but you obviously don't want to press that eviscerate